Gowerton Parkway. You join me now for the latest layout update, and we'll have a quick look at some of the things that I've been up to just recently. Now, just before I get much further into this video, I'd like to apologise if there's any background noise. It is blowing an absolute hoolie outside. There's some sort of storm kicking off. I'm not quite sure what it's all about, but it's certainly creating a bit of a windy noise in the loft. So if you can hear it, I do apologise. So I'll just quickly summarise the things that we're going to have a look at today. I alluded to the fact in my last video that we were perhaps going to be looking at getting some signalling done over the course of the next few weeks since the last video, and that is in fact what I've done. I've been focusing mainly on the signalling. There's a couple of bits and pieces of rolling stock I need to update you on. I've carried out a couple of nice little projects which I'd like to share with you and hopefully just bring you up to speed with where we are, and yeah, hopefully you'll enjoy the video, and I will proceed to just start off by showing you around the signalling. Okay, so you can see in front of you a couple of the signals that I've installed, and before I go too far into it, I'd just like to quickly offer some thanks to a couple of people that have helped me with this. There's a guy in work drew up a signalling plan for me, and I've since had that looked at and verified by a couple of my friends, Greg Marshall and John Batley. Both of them are ex-railwaymen people. Well, I say ex-railwayman, Greg still is a railwayman, but both people with extensive knowledge of the railway, and Greg in particular is an ex-Network Rail signalman and signalling and telecommunications engineer, so he knows what he's talking about, and they have verified my signalling plan, so I'd like to thank them both for their help with that. Now, the signalling plan, I'm sure there'll be some little holes that anybody could pick in it, because I think signalling is a little bit open to interpretation. I personally know absolutely nothing about it, so I'm very grateful that people have taken the time to talk me through some various bits and pieces and given me some sort of heads up to the kind of signals that I need and where I'd need them. So what we'll do, we'll start off by looking at the types of signals that you've got in front of you at the moment, and these are my ground position signals, and they are made by DCC Concepts. So we'll zoom over to one and have a closer look at it. Okay, so these ground position signals, as I mentioned just previously, are made by DCC Concepts. They come in a pack of about a dozen or so, and I purchased a pack that actually contained a mimic board as well. Now, the mimic board is basically a DCC interface, and it allows you to wire the signals independently back to the mimic board, and it will give each signal a DCC address. Now, one of the limitations that I've noticed with the mimic boards is you can't specifically choose addresses for each signal randomly, so I couldn't have one signal numbered number 3, one numbered 100, one numbered 102, for example. What you need to do is pick a number to start with, so I think it was 104, and then it counts up the numbers in sequence from there. So I've got 102, 104, 105, 106, 107, 108, 109, etc, etc, and you can see how that sequence goes on, and it will give you the separate number for each output on the mimic control panel. Now, in front of you, you can see the signal type that I've chosen. It's what they're quoting as the BR era, which is suitable up until modern day, allegedly. I know there's a different type you can get with white and red displays, but I've gone for these ones. So currently at the moment, that signal in front of you is displayed at a stop position, and what I'll do is I'll quickly just change that so you can see how they look when they change. And that's your go position, and I'm pretty pleased with them. I don't know much about signals, as I've said. I've had to ask a lot of people for a lot of assistance with these, but I really do think that they actually transform the appearance of the layout having them there, and yeah, I'm pleased with them so far. What I'll do now, I'll quickly just get under the board and show you the mimic panel. Apologies if you can hear that wind. I know it's blowing quite a lot at the moment, so I'll just go under the baseboards and show you the mimic panel. You have to excuse my wiring. I'm not a wiring enthusiast, as you're about to see. The light's a little bit dingy under here, but you can basically see the mimic control panel. Each of the signals have outputs, and you directly plug the signals into them. You can see them across the top there. I'm not going to dwell too much on this shot because the lighting under here is really poor. I don't have any illumination under the baseboards, but you can get a rough idea of how it goes. Each of the signals come with directly wired to the plugs. The wires are quite short, so I've had to extend my wires, but you can extend them to any length you want. I've got the mimic panel at this end of the layout, and then I've got some ground position signals at the other end of the layout, which is a good 20 feet away, and they still work absolutely fine. So this actual mimic panel is wired directly into the DCC power bus. So you'll notice that one of the signals in this shot, the one sort of furthest away from us, is actually mounted on a pole. Now, these signals actually come attached with a pole like this, so it allows you to position them on the ground, in the air, or whichever height you like. Now all of these signals I've made my own identification plaques for, so it's allowed me to position these underneath, and then after doing some research into ground position signals, they're always on the driver's side, and I have found examples of ground position signals on poles on the ends of platforms, and that seemed the best option for this one here. So if I just zoom in on this a little bit, hopefully you'll be able to see the little bits of detail that I've added to that. So you can just see I've added a signal number to there. I've called it GP105 for Gowerton Parkway, and that signal is DCC address 105. See, I'm just having a quick look at the other end of the layout. I've got these signals positioned in strategic places throughout the layout. You can see 3 there. You've got one for entrance and exit to the head shunt, and one for entrance into the traction maintenance depot down here in front of us. And then I have got a further signal positioned just here. Now this signal is for entry into the yard. I do require to put another signal here which will grant access out onto the main line, but that one is to be done in the future. What I do now is I'm going to move you on to my mainline signals, and I will show you what I've done with those. I'm having a little look at this signal. Now this signal is a train tech sensor signal, and it's one of their 3 aspect signals, and effectively what happens is when a train passes it, that will automatically turn to red, and then after a certain amount of time it cycles back through to yellow and green again. Now this signal is pretty much as it was out of the box. I've still got to work on this. Now these signals, to be honest, they don't look particularly realistic when you get them, and I've done quite a lot of work to the ones on the other side of the layout. This is the starting point. I'll show you what I've done on the other signals just to show you how you can bring those to life. Okay, so this signal is exactly the same as the one that we've just looked at, except I've gone to town a bit on it and detailed it and painted it to make it look a little bit more authentic. So I'll talk you through what I've done. I've added the detailing kit to this, and I've painted pretty much the entire signal, bar the signal head, grey. This is realistic and to prototype. Most signals, if you look at, they are grey apart from the actual signal head itself. So the back of the signal head has been painted grey. The concrete base that the actual signal is sat on has been painted grey as well, just to get rid of the black appearance that was previously there. This helps to make it look like that the signal's actually been set into concrete rather than just that it's on a black plastic block, which is what it previously was. That actually houses the decoder, that part of the signal, so it's an important part, but I did think that perhaps they would be a little bit better if they were supplied in grey plastic rather than black. In any case, they're not, and this is what I've done to make the signals look a little bit better. So once I sprayed the pole and the base and the ladder and the cages and the back of the signal grey, I painted back in the pieces black that I needed to paint in black. So the mounting bracket that sits on the bottom, that's been painted black, and then there's a little black band, as it were, that goes sort of halfway up the signal, which is halfway, about a third of the way up the signal, which is black. Now, having looked at many photos of signals, it appeared to be quite a common feature, so I thought it was something to replicate, and it's actually come out quite nicely. Now, if I just pan over here, you can see the back of another signal there, and you'll see where I've painted it. Previously that was all black, the ladder was black, the cage was black, the back of the signal was black, and the base was black, and I think you'll agree that that's made a bit of a difference. And to be honest, looking at all of this, the actual installation of signals full stop has helped make the layout look a damn sight more realistic than it did before. I've never really got into putting signals onto the layout before, and I think the reason that I've not done it is because I don't fully understand them, and I was worried about putting things in the wrong places and making it look worse than it actually was to start with. But having been given a bit of a guide on where to put signals, I'm quite pleased with the way these have come out. Now we'll just focus back on the signal on the left hand side here. So if I just zoom back in on that one so we can have a further look. You see again with this one, I've put the signal identification plate on there. I've made that on the computer, just printed that off, and then I've mounted it onto the signal and painted around the edges of it black. It's literally just straight onto photo paper, but I think it gives a fairly decent effect. Now, as I mentioned, these are sensor signals, so in effect what that means is that they will automatically change as a piece of rolling stock or locomotive passes them. So if you have a little look, you can just see just in front of the rails there is a little black sensor piece. Now that is actually mounted directly to the signal. I've disguised a lot of the gubbins underneath ballast and just tried to hide it to make it look as least intrusive as possible. So you can't see, but there's actually a pair of pins that go back towards the signal itself, and you can, in fact, if you weren't bothered about going to the degree that I've done, just slot the signals directly into the track. Now, I've actually wired these directly to the track, so I've soldered, there's contacts on there, and they're soldered directly to the track just to ensure a good connection and to enable me to minimise the visual impact of having those pieces plugged into the rails. So what I'll do, I'll just demonstrate to you now quickly the fact that the signals should change when a piece of rolling stock goes by. So there goes 37, and the signal has changed to a red aspect. Now, these signals, you can actually piggyback them onto other signals. So this one here is wired in with the signal round at the station side. So effectively what will happen, that signal will stay on a red aspect until the train reaches the other signal and passes that, and then it will start to cycle back through past green. You can use the signals on your own and not piggyback them together like that. Piggybacking them gives you a more realistic sort of appearance as the trains pass the signals. If you use them individually, the train will pass, and then after a few seconds it will go back through the cycle, it'll go to yellow, and then it will go to green. But with this, the trains actually physically have to clear the block that they're in before the signals will cycle back to green. So I've got those two linked, and the other signal that we saw just in the shot a little bit earlier, that one is standalone. There's only one of those signals on the inner line, so it's just on its own and it automatically cycles. But it works quite nicely, and I think I'm quite pleased with those. So hopefully you'll agree they're quite nice, and it does go to show that with a relatively budget signal, as I said, they're about £35, but you do get quite a lot of functionality for your money. They're all individually controllable, very, very easy to program. I've given them all their own addresses, so I can manually override the controls as well. So if I wanted to change that back to green now, I could using my DCC controller. But for £35, I think they represent excellent value for money. You can buy as many as you like and synchronise them into blocks of any size as far as I'm aware. So yep, good pieces of kit, and I would recommend those. So you can see now the train has cleared that signal and it remains on red. If we just wait for it for a few moments, it's just gonna just run it around to the other side of the layout, and you'll be able to see this will cycle back through the red, yellow to green cycle. It takes a while to get around the loft because it's a fairly large layout. So the 47's just coming back through the station now, and what will happen is as the locomotive and the rake approach the signal, the other side, that signal which will be showing a green aspect, the train has just passed it, so the locomotive has passed it, and it will now be showing a red aspect. And once the last coach of the train has passed, which it is just about to, that cycles back through. And that's back on green, ready for the next train that comes through. I think it's a pretty cool piece of kit. So in front of you, you can see one of my slightly more labour intensive projects that I've carried out over the last month, and that is this Hornby Class 56 in transrail livery. This is locomotive number 56036. Now, this locomotive is a complete respray that I have carried out. Now, the locomotive body itself was a triple grey model to start with. I had a little bit of a calamity with one of my Class 56s, if I'm honest with you, at the start of the month. I had looked at my EWS 56 model, and I decided that what I wanted to do was respray the model into a transrail livery, but the triple grey livery. So I stripped the body, but I accidentally left the body in paint stripper overnight. I used Phoenix Super Strip, and it split part of the body. So I had a chassis and I had no decent body left. Luckily, I got in touch with somebody via Facebook. I just put a plea for help out for a Class 56 body, and Steve Smith of Railway Laser Lines had a spare Class 56 body going, and I purchased that off of him and resprayed it into this transrail livery. Now, what I've done, because I did cock up my EWS Class 56 in the process, the intention with that was always to replace it once another model came up at a good price, and I have since replaced that. So I have got the EWS 56, but that still just needs to be weathered and detailed. So in essence, the chassis that's underneath this used to be on an EWS 56. I hope you're following. This is all a bit boring, I know, but in essence this was a triple grey locomotive. It started out completely stripped back and resprayed into transrail livery. Now, some of you may or may not know, this is a sort of a glaring omission from the Hornby Super Detail range. They haven't bothered to ever do a Class 56 in transrail livery. Now, this model, I've modelled this in sort of 1996, 1997 condition, so it's suitable for this layout, time period wise, and it'll be suitable for Bradwell Point. This locomotive kicked on into the early 2000s, but it had some modifications done to the roof grills which aren't present on this model. But yeah, I'm quite pleased with the way this has come out. It's the first respray that I carried out in a long while. I have started to respray some intercity power cars into fagpack kit livery, but that project sort of hit a bit of a stop because I got quite frustrated with the transfers on that. They were slightly tricky, so I fancied doing something a little bit more simple, and this is what I've come up with. I'm pleased with the finish on it. It's come out nicely, and I don't think it's too far off of something you'd be able to buy from a resprayer. I tend to spend a lot of time when I do these, and I've got a lot of admiration for guys that do resprays professionally as a job. Something like this would take me a good sort of 3 weeks to do gradually, but I know these resprayers rattle out hundreds of these models, and I really don't know how they do it so quickly. But there we go, so that's that model, and I am very pleased with that. So what I'll do, I'll just give you a couple of shots of that running, and hopefully you'll agree that makes quite a nice unique addition to the layout, which nobody else is going to have a model of. Okay, so this is the very latest addition to the layout, and I know what you're thinking. You're thinking, you've bought another steam locomotive, you said you wouldn't buy another steam locomotive, you bought an A4, you said at that point, I only need one steam loco, I'm never going to buy another one. Well, I bought one. This one, I'll talk you through my rationale behind this. The A4, and I'm not going to go into much detail about that, is gone. I don't own that anymore. That's been passed on to somebody else who bought it. They wanted the model, and I decided to let it go. Now, one of the reasons I decided to let it go is because I had my eye on this. I'd seen a few of the reviews on YouTube regarding the new Hornby Princess class locomotives, and they looked absolutely phenomenal. I thought, wow, if I was into steam, I would go for one of those. Now, I know absolutely nothing about steam. I'm not going to pretend I do. But what I did was, I normally, when I'm trying to figure out what locomotives I can get away with on my layout, I do a little bit of research. And I actually did some research for rail tours that happened around 2003. And it so happened that this locomotive, Princess Elizabeth, locomotive number 6201, was around at that time doing mainline tours in this livery. So I bought it. And what can I say? This locomotive is without doubt the best locomotive I've ever bought. It is absolutely stunning, and nothing else that I own gets anywhere near it. And it kills me to say it because I'm a diesel man. I'm not interested in steam, but this thing is something else. It is absolutely outrageous. The quality of it is amazing. It absolutely weighs a ton. The finish on it is beautiful. It just looks the part. It's just such a spectacular looking model. All I've had to do with this since I've had it is just add the overhead warning flashes, which you can probably make out in this shot. I have actually missed 2. There should be a further 2 warning flashes just on the little bit above the buffer beam. I would love to give you the technical name for that, but I know nothing about steam locos, as I admitted, other than this was running during the period that I model. So I decided to purchase this, and as I said, it is literally the best model I own. I've never seen anything produced to this quality ready to run, and I will get some close-up shots now, just take you over some of the features, just to try and explain what I'm saying and try and justify myself so you don't think I've gone absolutely mad. A little bit of a closer look at it now, and I'll just show you a couple of the features that I really like about the locomotive. Now, one of the things that I enjoy is that the locomotive, actually, if you can just about make it out in there from the camera angle, has firebox flicker. So the firebox prototypically flickers with a nice little orange light. That's something that I've seen people install on locomotives themselves, but I've never seen it in a ready-to-run model, so that's a really nice feature and I like that. The overall look of the model is brilliant. There's so much detail in this. All of the rivets are picked out, and if you're that way inclined, I expect you could probably count them and they'd all be there. The livery application is beautiful. It's really, really crisp, and the locomotive has got a really nice sort of satin sheen finish to it, and it just looks absolutely superb. I'd say probably the worst bit about this locomotive is the overhead warning flashes that I've applied. I'm sure there's some steam enthusiasts out there that won't like those, but it needs to be on there to be appropriate for my layout. As a kid, one of the main things that I used to model was steam. I used to do it because as a kid you grow up and you like steam locomotives. I think that just tends to be the way it goes. But I moved away from them onto diesels, and it was purely the thing that attracted me to diesels was the fact that the models of them ran so much better when I was a kid. But this thing here, this runs absolutely impeccably, and it will perform alongside any of my best runners, and possibly even outperform them. The Hatton 66, now I've sorted that out, is an impeccable runner, and this will perform alongside that, possibly outperform it even. I paid £150 for this model. I paid £150 for a Hatton 66, so you can draw your conclusions about where you think the money was better spent, but this locomotive is fantastic, and I think Hornby have absolutely nailed it, and it really does sort of go to show the work that Simon Kohler has put in since he's returned to Hornby, and the positive influence he's having on the company, because this is, like I say, it's the best model that I've got. It's the best model I own, and it really does my head in to say that, because I'm not a steam person at all. So what I'll do now, I will give you some running shots of it. After you've seen some shots of that running, I'll chuck in a clip of a real steam locomotive that ran through Gowerton just recently. We had a visit from Britannia, I think it was at the end of July. That came through with a charter, and it made for quite impressive viewing. So I know that you're probably thinking that I've lost the plot now. I bought a steam locomotive, I've taken a video of a real one, and you're all going to unsubscribe and hate the channel, but I do apologise. We'll get back to some diesels just after this. I've got something equally impressively diesely to show you. try and restore a bit of normality after all that steamy nonsense. This is my HST. You've seen this before plenty of times, but over the course of the last month I've been working on this, and I have fitted it now with some sound. Now it's got two V5 decoders, one at each end, with EM2 speakers. It's got Lego Man Biffo's latest Paxman Valenta sound files, which are appropriate for the locomotives and the types, and they've been acquired from Richard at Roads and Rails as per normal with my sound stuff. So what I'll do, rather than waffle on, is literally I'll just show you this, and we'll well, I'm sure you'll see now that I think this is definitely one of the best uses of the EM2 speaker in a locomotive. It required a little bit of cutting. I had to cut out some of the chassis just to be able to fit the speakers in, but once they are in, they are brilliant. So let's just boot this thing up and you can have a little listen. So you're probably hearing the distance it's starting. The two power cars start independently, so that's the rear power car starting, and then the front one should kick in a moment. So that's the rear one up and running, and this one has just started now, so I'll shut up and we can have a listen. Okay, so that really is that for this month. We've gone through everything that I wanted to get through, and no further work has been done to the layout other than what we discussed. what I'm probably going to look to try and do over the course of the next 4 weeks is just tidy up various bits and pieces on the layout and see if we can get things looking good. There's a few little bits and bobs that need tidying up and need improving from a aesthetic perspective that will help tie the entire layout together and make it look a lot better. I have got another little respray project in mind, so if I get some time I may have a go at that. I've got the locomotive ready for that, and that one is going to be a respray of a class 60. Looking potentially to spray that into a quite unique livery, the one we haven't done yet, but more on that as I get closer to the time. I won't bother going into that too much now, but other than that, I do hope that you've enjoyed the video. Thanks again for all your comments and your subscriptions and your likes, etc. It does mean a lot to know that people are out there and watching this stuff that I churn out, and it makes it worthwhile. It's nice to just be able to do something on a layout and then share it with people and see what they think, because I think that's the way that I've learned the most in this hobby, to be perfectly honest. So I'll leave you with that, and hope you're all keeping well and continue to stay safe, and I will speak to you all again in the not too distant future. Thanks very much for your time. Bye bye.